Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Handmade Homestead. I'm Angela Allen, and we are back out in the garden. And today I am in my pepper patch, and I'm going to bring in a lot of my peppers. It's time. Let's go. Now, I don't know about most of you, but I do go through this every year, trying to figure out, is it time to pull the plants? Should I wait a few more weeks? Will it be warmer again? And invariably, it's always warmer again until it gets to late October. But I have a lot of other things I'd like to be doing too. The garden is very productive. And unlike some people, I don't lament the coming of fall and winter. Those are two of my favorite seasons. While it's completely normal to feel a letdown after you spent a whole season growing plants that have grown and are beautiful and are very productive, for me, when I pull my plants, I'm just really grateful for what they've produced for my family and how satisfied I feel with my accomplishments. So I'm okay pulling them. I don't save plants for year to year. Some people will save their peppers, trim them off, put them in a pot, and keep them in the garage or the basement, someplace to keep them alive, and then plant them out again. I don't go through all that. I push my plants to be super productive, and so they're tired by the time they get to this time of year, and I'm happy to pull them out and start with fresh plants next year. So when I get back inside, I am going to have a lot to do. I've got all of these peppers to process, and we'll talk about that when we go in the house. I've got a bunch of ideas for that. And in the meantime, I'm going to just pick some more. I don't think I'm going to pick all 100 plants. Now, once again, I am not a tall person, but I am standing up. This is one of my pepper plants right here. If I look at it, I think this is an Ajvarski pepper. Yeah, it looks like it. Pretty crazy, huh? I'm so proud of how tall these got. And there's some in the back. Let me see if I can pan that way a little bit. And there's separate pepper plants in the back right here that are even taller than me too. So I'm really proud of how they did this year. They've been super productive. I've been picking fruit off of them since they first set fruit months ago. And that's why most of the fruit that you see on my plant isn't very big, because I do pick it as I go along. We use them green all the time. I haven't bought peppers in a year at a grocery store. So I'm going to pick some more. We'll get these in and we will get processing them. Let's go. Now I've already picked all of the hot peppers and they are already in the house in a metal bowl. I have this bowl that I'm filling up. I'm only going to fill this bowl and then bring it in. Like I said, I'm not going to pick all of the peppers because frankly there's too many to deal with in one sitting. But I'm not complaining about the abundance, and I'm sure you wouldn't be either. All right, back to picking. That last plant that I just picked, it looks like banana peppers to me, wouldn't you say? They're mild, they're sweet banana peppers. But the tag that was right in the ball of fruits says giant Marconi. So I'm not much for worrying about tags. I do tag stuff only because I want to know how good that variety does in planning for my next year's garden to see if I'm going to plant it again or if I'm not going to plant it again. So I do know I would always plant giant Marconi. I would always plant banana peppers. I would always plant Ajvarski peppers and shishito peppers. Those are like top of the line for me. Not jalapenos I grow because I don't like a lot of heat, but I also grow some jalapenos too, and those I use to make cowboy candy or the Rotel knockoff tomatoes for my shelf too. Rotel brand tomatoes are delicious if you like hot and spicy, but even the milder versions I think are too spicy. I have strong taste buds, I guess, but nobody in my family is really big on heat. My kids are a little bit, but my husband and I aren't. So I make my own Rotel sort of knockoff, just in 8-ounce containers with half jalapeno peppers and half jalapeno peppers, and that way I still get the contrast. It looks beautiful in a jar. I get a tiny bit of spice and all of the flavor, because I do love the flavor of jalapeno peppers. I just don't like the heat. So those are peppers that I always grow. I'm not big on growing any kind of bell pepper, you know, great big sweet peppers. I like Jimmy Nardello for the flavor, but frankly, they're a tiny skinny pepper. They don't give me a lot of bang for the buck. If you have any great peppers that are must grows in your garden, can you put that down below? I'd love to hear what other people are growing. I like big, juicy peppers. I use them green mostly. I don't care if they ever turn red. But yeah, big, juicy, super prolific peppers, and lots of pepper flavor. That's what I'm looking for. So put your favorite varieties down below and I will check those out for next year's garden. So I did pick peppers yesterday and the day before for meals, and I did pick a number of peppers this morning already to bring in. And I did that because I knew my bowl probably wouldn't hold all of the peppers I wanted to pick today to get processed. So if you don't see as many peppers coming off the plants as you saw on the plants in the last video that I did last week about peppers, I'll put that right up here so you can see it. If you don't see that, that's why. I've already picked a bunch of them, but I am actually pulling plants today. All right, so I am gonna finish up picking peppers, and then we will get inside and get processing these. All right, here we go. You know, I'm down here on the ground because I want to show you how close I plant my pepper plants. I don't know if you can see in there, but they're really not even 12 inches apart. They may be 8 inches apart, my plants. I do plant them very close, and I have super good productivity with that. They grow taller rather than wider, and they are full of fruit. And again, like I said, they get to be 5.5 feet tall anyway every year. Well, it is warm out here. I am standing in the dappled light from my peach trees, which is so refreshing, even at the end of September in Zone 7A in Rhode Island. We are coastal Rhode Island. We are actually on an island, so we are surrounded by water. It gets very humid here, but it's very beautiful and it's very temperate, so it's a great place to grow. If you do me a favor, if you find this kind of video helpful and you enjoy this content, if you could just like and subscribe, comment down below. It helps so much with the algorithm, and we are trying to grow. And I so appreciate that. We're going to wash and sort all of them. I've already sorted the hot peppers. You can see those at the very end. Those are hot. Those aren't. These are all the sweets. So I'm not going to mix them up. I'm going to sort these as I wash them. Make it a whole lot easier to can them or freeze them or preserve them in however way I'm going to. I'm about halfway through washing and sorting my peppers, but I thought I would stop and I would just show you the 10 kinds of peppers that I grew this year. I was afraid if I washed them all and put them all on the counter, the piles would blend into each other too much for me to explain them easily. So we'll start with these just so you can see the different varieties that I grow. I would love to hear about the ones that you grow, but let's start up here. These are banana peppers. They are sweet banana peppers. They start off as green, and then as they ripen, you get that nice yellow pepper. These I'm going to cut into rings, and I'm going to pickle them with a little bit of garlic and can them, water bath can them, so they'll be like the sandwich peppers you get when you go to Subway sandwich. These are yummy. These are shishito peppers. They start off as green, they lighten a little bit to almost a pale yellow, and then they turn bright red. In our house, if you see red ones, it's because we missed them on the plant, because we typically eat these too fast for them ever to get red. These are the kind of peppers that you get in a fancy restaurant. They poke holes in them, they break off the top like this, poke some holes in them, and then blacken them in a cast iron frying pan until they taste like they were fire roasted, and serve them with a little bit of aioli, or you can eat them raw with ranch dressing. They're really crunchy, they're sweet, and they're thin-walled. Of note though, shishito peppers, 1 in every 10 or 20 will be hot, so that's always kind of a surprise, but otherwise they're delicious and sweet. Just know that you could get a surprise when you're eating them. These are Edgevarsky peppers. They will get quite a bit bigger. They will eventually get red, but again, I do pick and use peppers frequently. So these are what I had left on the plants, this plus the ones in the sink. They do go from green to a lighter, almost yellowish green, and then red. These are the ones I keep saying are my favorite peppers, but I'm incorrect when I say that. It's not Edgevarsky that are my favorite. These are lovely frying peppers, and I do love them. But these are my favorite. These are giant Marconi. You can get giant Marconi reds, which is what these are, and you can get giant Marconis that turn golden orange when they're ripe. But for us, they don't last long enough to get to that point, because these are the peppers. When I go out to pick peppers, it's almost always these I grab. They are thinner walled frying pepper. They're nice and sweet, but they have that green pepper flavor that I so prefer in cooking. They make great additions to fajitas, or really any frying pepper that you'd want. You can stuff them quite easily. They have a small seed cavity. You just stick a chopstick in there, run it around, and the whole seed cavity will just pop out. Rinse them, and you're ready to stuff them. So they work really well that way. They will turn red, these. Like I said, I buy the red seed. These are just bell peppers. I think they're California Wonder, the brand. I don't grow a lot of bell peppers. They're okay. Thick walled, they're sweet. I don't find regular bell peppers all that interesting, so I don't grow very many of them. All right, moving on. I have to go down to the other side. Hang on. All right, we're going to turn you this way. These are Cubanelle peppers. Cubanelle this is like a standard looking one, the longer shape. They're kind of a pale yellow lime green. You can use them for stuffing. They're great for frying. They're mild, slightly medium. Sometimes they can be a little bit more towards medium. These, though they look like jalapeno peppers, these are not a pino, so you get all of the flavor and none of the heat of a standard jalapeno, but they're just a great pepper. I like these for flavoring because they do taste really good, but I never use them other than in rings or in fine dices, because jalapenos always have that tough skin. If you use them in a whole version like this, you got this big piece of very tough skin that's not going to cook down no matter what you put them in. So I either dice them finely or I pickle them in rings. I use them in cowboy candy along with the regular standard hot jalapenos, which is what these are over here, not that one, and not that one. These are just standard hot jalapeno peppers. I do make a lot of cowboy candy. My family really loves that, but I have plenty of that on the shelf. So some of these are going to end up in my version of Rotel, which will be much less spicy than the store brand Rotel cans. I'll use a little bit of the hot jalapenos, and I'll use some of these jalapenos in there with the tomatoes when I make those. The rest will just be canned, water bath canned hot peppers, just in half pint and quarter pint containers for cooking. And then finally, these are Pippin's Golden Honey. I'm going to show you a couple close up. They start out as green peppers, The green pepper goes over to very purple. You can see the purple there. And then the purple gives way to very dark purple, which looks black. And then that gives way to a yellowish hue. You can see the purple turning yellow. And then these will eventually turn a very orangey golden color. Hence the name, Pippin's Golden Honey. They're not overly sweet. It's just the color that gives them their namesake. They're an okay pepper. They were fun to grow, but they're not, they're cute, they're fun to grow. They're very prolific, but that's about as big as the pepper gets at its biggest size. So I like a lot of bang for my buck. I'm really looking for peppers that get like this size. You know, this doesn't really do it for me. All right, so those are, oh, and then one more. These are Jimmy Nardellos. The reason I have them stuck in the back there, somehow one of my Jimmy Nardello plants, and these are a nice frying pepper, but tall and skinny, not a lot of bang for your buck. But one of my Jimmy Nardellos ended up planted right next to my hot peppers, and any of the peppers that I've pulled off that plant have been very hot. They must have cross-pollinated with these hot jalapenos, so they're going to be treated as hot peppers when I'm canning. So those are the 10 varieties of peppers that I grew this year. I don't know if I'm growing all of these next year. Definitely Marconi's will always be on my list, and Shishitos, they will always be on my list. So, and Cubanelles I grow every year too. Everything is washed and sorted. We're going to get these all in separate bags so we can tell them apart and get these peppers processed. When I'm canning anything at all, I've always learned that the best thing to do is to do the canning first and then the preparing, freezing, and dehydrating after with whatever is left over. So we're going to start with the hot peppers and getting those diced up and sliced up. I think we'll do Rotel first. Gonna need some gloves because, you know, hot peppers. Got my jars all sterilized and I am ready to get started. We are gonna start with my version of Rotel. So this is actually kind of a dupe of Ruth Zimmerman's recipe. I did make half as much as Ruth makes when she makes hers. So this is about 6 cups of finely diced tomatoes. Skin and seeds are on. And then 1 cup of finely diced combination of hot jalapeno peppers and the no heat jalapenos. I do that so I have enough of the green color and flavor, but none of the heat, or very little of the heat. These do not have extra liquid added. They do have 1/8 of a teaspoon of citric acid in the bottom of the container. About 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt also in the bottom of the container before I put in the diced tomatoes. The one thing I didn't do that Ruth recommends is she strains her tomatoes before she puts them in the jars, and frankly I forgot to do that, but it turned out okay. After they were water bath processed and I did a little shaking, they evened out and they came out really well in the jars. But next time I'll remember to do that, and absolutely go over to her, Ruth Zimmerman, Homesteading with the Zimmermans, and I'm sure you can find her recipe on how she does her version of Rotel. This is just me using a chopper to chop those hot peppers for my own safety. All right, these are the banana peppers. I sliced them in rings. I did put a clove of garlic, some fresh oregano, and just a standard pickling brine for peppers. And I'll put that down below in the description in the show notes for you to see. But it is basically just 2 cups of vinegar, white vinegar, 2 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, pickling salt, and 1 tablespoon of sugar mixed together. And then I add any flavorings I want to add, like pickling spices or
fresh or dried herbs or that kind of thing as well. So that's what's in here. I did push them down very, very firmly because they are raw packed and they're going to shrink up after they're cooked. I also did make sure that I debubble, something I don't commonly do. I do if I'm doing any kind of raw packing. I had put the lid on and forgot to debubble, so I went back to debubble. That's what you see me doing here. I just did a couple of these. I'm actually very low on jars and very low on caps, I noticed. So rather than run out to the store and do that, I decided I would just work with what I had and then probably put the extra peppers in the freezer because I do need them in the freezer for wintertime cooking. I think so far this year I've only stashed about 5 or 6 packages of frozen pepper strips, so I really need a lot of these to go into the freezer. But these pickled pepper rings are going to be great on sandwiches. So I'm looking forward to those. Now this is the same thing again, except there are sliced jalapeno peppers. There, they look like jalapenos, but they're not. They're the unhot ones. Those sliced jalapeno peppers and the sliced banana peppers there are going into jars that have leftover hot peppers from the Rotel in the bottom. I think I did 3 or 5 containers like this where I've got these milder peppers on top of, again, hot jalapeno peppers that have been diced smaller but that are in the bottom of this jar, along with some fresh thyme and some fresh oregano just to give it flavor. Those again are going to be pushed down pretty firmly, debubbled, and filled to a 1/4 inch headspace. I always wipe my rims, always. This brine does have a little bit of sugar, but even if it didn't, I would wipe it to make sure there was no salt or stickiness or anything blocking a good seal. And I almost never have a failed seal. So take it from me, mind your headspace, and always clean your rims well. You can see me pushing on that a lot. I want to make sure that those are really well packed in there because you know once they're cooked, they're going to float and I'm going to have 3 inches at the bottom of just liquid. But as usual, if you just let them cool and finish sealing, once you're able to take off that other ring and you know you've got a good seal, if you give them a little bit of a shake, toss them around, and those peppers loosen up, they will fill the whole jar. Because everything that I'm canning here are raw peppers that are being raw packed, I am holding off to process everything together at the same time. And I will process at the longest time, which will be 10 minutes, even though some of those are just 4-ounce containers and some are 16. All right, these are shishito peppers. I am going to sit here and break off the tops. I do not remove the seeds. And I do not remove all of the stem cap, just the very end of the stem. And I'm going to pickle a couple of jars of these as well. So I am sorting them. The bigger ones I'm kind of putting aside because those will be frozen to be used as frying peppers. But the smaller ones and the medium ones, those I'm going to pickle. And I'm really just planning to do 2 jars of them here. So after removing all of the stem tops, I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a very sharp knife and poke a slit right through each one of these peppers just once so that they will absorb the brine better once they are in the jars. In the jar, each jar has an entire clove of garlic that's been split down the middle. And it's also got about a 1/2 tablespoon of my favorite pickling spice, just to give these a little bit of a different flavor than the other peppers that I've been doing today. And these are kind of a nice thing to have like on a charcuterie board or just on the side of something else you're eating, even as a condiment on a burger or something. They're really good. But So I'm going to pack them in lengthwise. That is 1 bay leaf. I happen to have a bay tree as an indoor plant. In fact, it's not in my yard. It's a plant that I have in my house. But I just stuck 1 fresh bay leaf in there too for extra flavor. And I am going to go through and pack these in very, very snugly, because again, once they're processed, the peppers are going to, one, absorb some of the brine, and they're going to shrink some. So not only will they float a little bit after they're out and cooled from the hot water bath, they may look like the liquid is a little bit lower in them. But as long as the liquid is more than halfway up your jar and it's sealed, it is safe to use and safe to store. And after packing in tight, I am going to add brine. And again, this is the same exact basic brine that I've been using on all of the peppers that I'm canning today. You can see I have a really extra large canning pot. I've got 13 jars in there. This canning pot will hold like something like 16 8-ounce jars, and at least a dozen 16-ounce jars and 8 quart jars too. Most of the rest of these peppers that you see are going to be put into the freezer. I will take out some and leave them in the crisper drawer for us to eat fresh over the next 2 weeks. That little bag in the front, those are shishito peppers. There's probably about 3 meals left of those. They will go into 3 separate freezer bags whole, and they're already prepped. I've already taken off the top stem and I've already poked holes in them, so they will be ready to use right from the freezer to fry. The rest of them, other bags of peppers, those will all be cut into strips so I can use them in fajitas or chili or that kind of thing. And the good thing about frozen peppers, frozen in strips, you just bang them on the counter a few times in the bag and it will break them up enough to count as diced peppers without having to freeze them that way. So they're more versatile if I just freeze them in strips.
So thank you again for joining me this morning while we picked peppers and pulled up plants for our late fall garden. And while we went through the process of putting some of them up for winter use. And I will see you next time. Take care.